Can't hear anyone.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I think we're going to give it maybe one more minute and then we're going to get started.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Bossert. I'm the Senior Manager of Welcome and Integration with Nationalities Service Center. We are here today to celebrate Welcoming Week as part of the national organization's Welcoming America Welcoming Week. And we are also glad to participate in the City of Philadelphia's Office of Immigrant Affairs Welcoming Week. I am joined here today by my colleague, Jackie.
Hi, my name is Jackie McCann. I'm also part of the reception and placement team here at NSC. I'm the community support specialist, so I work with all things volunteers, donations, sponsors. So yeah, we're going to be talking about the history of refugees, talking about who our clients are, what the NSC does, and then how you can get involved.
So just a few logistics before we move on. Can everyone hear us okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And we are recording this because we do hope to use it in the future to garner additional future support. So if you are not comfortable having your video or your face on the recording, you can just click the stop video on your Zoom account there. Great. So as I mentioned previously, we're doing this event as part of the Welcoming America Welcoming Week, and then the City of Philadelphia's Office of Immigrant Affairs Welcoming Week. We would really like to take, the time today to share with you about who our clients are and how you can be involved in becoming a welcoming community for newly arriving refugees and immigrants. So we're now going to do a little activity. Can everyone see the suitcase on the screen? I see nodding heads. Good, thank you. So we're going to do a little activity here to help you understand what our clients experience. So the scenario is that you and your family are living in a village in Burundi, and there are currently some conflicts between government and rebel forces who want to overtake the government. Government forces come through your village and they are just asking for a hot meal and a place to sleep. So your family provides that to them out of hospitality. The next morning, you find out that rebel forces are upset with the fact that your family has helped these government forces and that you're sympathetic to the Burundian government. As a result, they are now threatening to burn your village down. So the activity is that you have 5 minutes to pack your suitcase. We're going to take just 2 to 3 minutes here. I want you to think about what you would pack in your suitcase. You do not know where you're going. You do not know for how long and if you'll ever be able to return. So take the next 2 minutes and think about what you would pack, and then we'll go ahead and discuss that. Okay, everyone, if you could add in the chat box function the things that you packed in your suitcase and the reason why you packed it. Excellent, good. I'm seeing responses of medications, passports, good, okay. So I just like to talk through these, right? So we would pack a passport or a form of ID or travel documents so that we can have ID when we travel. Great, thank you for your responses. So I see some of you are putting ID documents. These will be really important for when you're crossing international boundaries. Some of you put medications, very good. Clothing. Somebody put family photos. Molly, thank you. Family photos will have a dual purpose. One, they can bring us happy memories, but on the other hand, they may also serve as the only evidence we have to apply to bring our family somewhere if we ever get separated. Religious text, excellent for encouragement, personal growth. Tradable values, excellent in case you need to trade something for food or some other kind of equipment. Walking shoes, good. Communication device like a cell phone, though you may also recall sometimes a phone charger may work in your country, but not another. So that's just something, that's just another kind of barrier that some of our refugees face. Good. And good. Toothbrush, good. What I don't see here is any kind of weapon. And I only say that because if you have some sort of weapon, one, then you can kind of hunt for food if needed, if you're in that kind of environment, but it could also be used as a means of protection. So if you could also just take a minute and in one word, describe what that process was like for you. What kind of feelings did you have? What thoughts were running through your head? How did that make you feel going through that exercise? Stressed, anxious, scrambling. Yep. Thought of survival needs. Excellent. Displacement. Good. Anxiety, of course. Yep. Yep. Not knowing that you'll ever be able to return to your home. You're not sure where you're going or for how long and what the future may bring, you know, can bring up a lot of questions, panic. Exactly. And so these are the types of experiences, these lived experiences that the refugees that we serve go through. They experience the almost what we like to call a triple trauma, where they experience the trauma in their homeland, then they experience the trauma of flight or fleeing their home or country, and then there's the third type of trauma where they're maybe integrating into a host country or being resettled into, you know, another host country. And so there's that kind of triple kind of trauma that our clients are experiencing that NSC then seeks to mitigate with the services that we have here. And so the example of our family from Burundi, you know, fleeing the threat of having their village burned down is just one reason why people migrate. Another reason could be environmental disaster, famine, lack of resources, lack of job opportunities. And for many of our refugees, they are fleeing a well-founded fear of persecution due to their race, religion, ethnicity, or the fact that they're a member of a particular social or political group, which often then forces them to flee out of survival. And so, as I just said, named the definition of a refugee, an asylum seeker, someone who seeks asylum, is someone who would flee their home country and go to another country and claim refugee status. They will then need to go through the immigration court proceedings in that country to determine if their fear of persecution is well-founded. If the judge deems that the refugee case is well-founded, they then become what's called an asylee. The main difference between immigrants and migrants, just kind of basic here, immigrants move to a place and kind of with the intent to stay there. So a refugee is a type of immigrant that's coming to the US, or they could be an immigrant on the green card lottery visa program. They could be coming on a marriage visa or a work visa. Those are types of immigrants with the intent to stay, whereas migrants are a bit more not bounded by moving to a place, but tend to move. I often like to think about the seasonal farm workers. An internally displaced person, if we looked at our family from Burundi, perhaps they fled their village and went to another village in that same country. Because they are still within the borders of Burundi, they are an internally displaced person. An SIV is a special immigrant visa holder. And these are people who are from Iraq or Afghanistan, who either worked for or on behalf of the United States government during the conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. And due to their involvement with the United States, whether they were interpreters, translators, cooks, security guards, or held any number of positions with the US government, many of them were targeted and tortured for their involvement. They can then come to the United States and are afforded the same rights as a refugee. The real difference is that SIVs get their green card upon arrival. For refugees in particular, the best option for them is repatriation or returning to their home and being able to rebuild their lives from there. If that is not an option, the next best option is to integrate into their host country. For example, if this family from Burundi made it to a neighboring country and registered with the UNHCR, or the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, they may want to build their lives from there in that neighboring country because they're not able to go home. The third option is refugee resettlement in a third country. The top 3 countries for refugee resettlement are Canada, the United States, and Australia, all of whom have varying requirements and eligibility criteria for refugees coming to their countries. And so for the US, that often involves security checks, background checks, checking addresses of where refugees and their family members have lived for the past 10 years, medical screenings, biometrics, and a number of other interviews in which they must repeatedly tell their story of trauma and how they fled in order to be considered for refugee resettlement. Here in Philadelphia, we have 3 main refugee resettlement agencies: NSC, Highest Pennsylvania, and Bethany Christian Services. We resettle anywhere between 200 to 500 refugees annually. I will say that under the previous administration, the city of Philadelphia welcomed close to 900 to 1,000 refugees annually. And the ethnicities that you see below that number are the main ethnicities that we are resettling here in this region. At NSC, and we have some unique programs that serve refugees, which Jackie can touch on later, but our Health Collaborative and our Philadelphia Partnership for Resilience are both led by NSC, whereas the Refugee Education Collaborative is led by Highest in an effort to help newly arriving refugee children and their families integrate into the American school system. Here in Philadelphia, we have often resettled refugees of very similar ethnicities into various pockets and neighborhoods around the city as a means of community support, and because of the resources that already existed in those areas of the city. NSC, Highest, and Bethany Christian Services can also resettle refugees in the other counties surrounding the city, including Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, and Delaware County. The Refugee Resettlement Program was formalized in the year 1980 with the Refugee Resettlement Act. It is led by the Department of State, the Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, or PRM. And as you can see, the numbers have been somewhat of a roller coaster. And under the current administration, we are at the lowest level of refugee admission ceilings in the history of the United States. When a refugee first arrives, I like to compare it to the phrase the honeymoon phase, just because for refugees, when they first arrive, it's very exciting, right? They have a safe place to live. They are not living in fear anymore. They have food to eat, and they have a place to live. And then after a few weeks, reality sets in. The reality of these challenges of maybe they don't speak fluent English. They don't know how to call their teacher at school. Perhaps they don't know how to say hello to their neighbors because of the language barriers. They may live in a very small apartment, even though they come from a farming community back in Burma. And it is all of these different barriers and challenges that NSC and community supporters and volunteers like yourself can really help these newly arriving refugees negotiate what they're going through to eventually help them integrate so that they can become contributing members of our society. What we don't want to see is a refugee alienated and feeling marginalized and sitting home alone. We really want to get them involved. So where does that bring us today, and how, can you be a part of this? So the role of a refugee resettlement agency and its community supporters and volunteers like yourself, we are here to help refugees connect to things like spokes on a wheel. So we are required to help refugees within their first 3 months get a job. We need to enroll them in English language learning classes. We help them get a social security card. We get them connected to a doctor for an initial health screening and any specialist follow-ups. We're required to get children enrolled in school within a month of arrival. We get them connected to food stamps and health insurance programs. And we teach them how to call their landlord and know how to pay their rent and their electric and their gas bills. And refugee resettlement, since inception, has been a public-private partnership. And so that is why we are here today as part of Welcoming Week, to really share more with you about how you can get involved to help us welcome others. So now I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague, Jacqueline McCann, to talk about ways to get involved. But before we do that, I recognize that I have shared a lot of information with you and wanted to open it up for any questions. If you had, you can type them in the chat just before we move on. Great question. Joanna, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Joanna. So yes, we have actually still been resettling refugees during the pandemic. During the month of April, we did not have any arrivals. And then the Department of State said that there were a number of refugees who were more vulnerable where they were, either in a refugee camp or in some other urban setting where they were actually more vulnerable where they were. And as a result, we've been resettling cases that have been most vulnerable since May. So we've actually resettled close to 40 individuals and families since the month of May. And for the month of September, We are expecting 15, a family of 6 this week, a family of 4 next week, and then another family of 3 next week. Joyce, thank you. How many volunteers work with the NSC? Great question. We actually have close to about 30 interns, volunteer interns, work with the various programs here at NSC each semester. So that totals to about 100 volunteer interns. And we've also been expanding opportunities for volunteers, and I would say close to 120, 130 volunteers who help with English classes, tutoring, homework helplines, home setups. Thomas, from where do the referrals come? Do you mean the referrals for the refugees that come to us, Thomas? I think that's what he means. So the referrals for refugee resettlement to the U.S. resettlement program. Yes, great. Okay, so once refugees register with the UNHCR, they are then screened for the eligibility criteria to determine if they're eligible for a resettlement program in a third country. So Canada actually has some different requirements than the US, which actually differ from Australia. So if, let's say, this family in Burundi has an aunt or a cousin who may reside in Philadelphia, that refugee case is then referred to the US Department of State and is then assigned to an agency like NSC, where we can reunite the cousin and then the family in Burundi. What are the requirements for your accompaniment? Great question. So we actually have a volunteer application on our website where you can actually learn more about the different types of volunteer opportunities that we have. We have many right now during the pandemic that are contactless, like our home setups. We have some that are also contactless on our homework helpline, where you can actually work with families to help them navigate the Google Classroom for students and homework helplines. And we are also now looking at asking other volunteers to help with in-person socially distanced services, such as teaching a refugee how to use a bus. So we'll be rolling out those new requirements soon. Main countries that you're now getting. So we get the families from, okay. So I'm gonna kind of address Randall's and Thomas' questions. So yes, we get refugee clients referred by the UNHCR. We also receive refugees who come from a local embassy overseas as part of the annual presidential determination, which puts forward how many refugees, but also where the refugees can come from. So the main countries that we are seeing right now are refugees from Burma. They're actually religious minority and ethnic minority refugees out of what's called Myanmar. We're also seeing some refugees from Pakistan. We are receiving some SIVs from Afghanistan. And we have had a few cases from the former Soviet Union, many of whom are coming out of the Ukraine. In terms of walk-ins, Thomas, so the only walk-ins we would get is an SIV case from Afghanistan or Iraq, who can actually come to the US and buy their own flights and then register with an agency like us. The other types of walk-ins would be other types of immigrants that NSC serves. So they might be survivors of trafficking, torture, and may approach NSC as a walk-in, and then we can get them connected to services. Randall, I'm going to answer this last question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jackie. So we actually enroll all refugees in an ESL class within 10 days of their arrival to the United States. This is to ensure that they're starting to learn their new language immediately upon arrival. And then we actually incorporate the teaching of English into many of our other services. For example, transportation orientation. How do I ask the bus driver to tell me when I need to get off at my stop? And refugees are actually often in another employment program that works with the English program so that they're taking ESL classes at least for the first 3 to 6 months after arrival. And yes, many of them are online right now using Zoom, but for some of our clients who don't feel comfortable with Zoom, we are actually doing one-on-one ESL classes over the phone with clients and an interpreter so that we can continually be teaching them so that they aren't left out. Great questions, everyone. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Jackie.
All right, thank you so much, Danielle. So now that we've learned a little bit about who our clients are and their journey to NSC, we're going to talk about the specific services that NSC provides and how each of you can be involved in those different ways. So first off, just a little background on the Nationalities Service Center. So it was founded in 1921 to assist immigrant women in acquiring language proficiency and gaining citizenship. It's evolved now, not just to serve women, but all the definitions that we mentioned above earlier. We still have language proficiency programs and citizenship programs as well, but it's much more expansive services today. So we're going to talk more about that. Currently, we serve over 5,000 immigrants and refugees annually. As Danielle mentioned, that number does change depending on the administration, but as of right now, we're serving about 5,000 immigrants and refugees. So here are the specific services or departments of NSC. So first you have the resettlement team, and that's the team that Danielle and I work closely with. So this team works with the refugee pre-arrival and then the first 90 days of their arrival. So this is everything from finding housing, working with local landlords, discussing prices and agreements on letting somebody with virtually no credit come and resettle here. It's a very community-based trust effort. And we do everything we can to make those efforts work. Also, resettlement includes when our refugees arrive here, our goal is to have them arrive from the airport to a fully stocked home with kitchen utensils, pots and pans to cook with, a refrigerator full of culturally appropriate groceries that is familiar to them, as well as a hot meal ready for them to eat. So these are all things that require tremendous efforts from our community in order to make happen. Along with resettlement, we enroll them in school, social security services, green card services as well, and it's the first 90 days of their arrival. So additionally, we also have the legal team. The legal team works on family reunification applications, petitions, asylum applications, family petitions, citizenship, as well as detention centers as well. We have survivor services, which is a combination of both case management, therapy services, as well as legal services as well. And it's for survivors of torture, victims of crime, and trafficking. Our employment services has really grown over the last few years. So employment, when you come to the country with just what you have in your suitcase, as we thought about earlier, you need a job immediately. And so we help our clients prepare for that, get ready for their interviews, get their resumes down to get that initial job. But we also work on building their resumes and talk to them through our employment counselors on what their aspirations are, what their goals are, because we want them not only to have that initial job that pays the bills, but to have a successful career here and be happy here in the United States. So that's been something that we're really excited about, and I'll talk a little bit about later. We also have the health access team, which helps navigate the insurance system here in the United States, and the food access team, which has really increased their capacity during the coronavirus pandemic. So the food access normally operates in a pantry here at the NSC, but we've been able to deliver food door to door with the help of community partnerships. So thank you for everybody who's been involved with that. We also have the wellness team, which is a really good time to kind of sit and a time of meditation. So on Wednesdays, we have Wellness Wednesdays, where our clients can come in and participate in yoga, acupuncture, crafting. So here at NSC, we don't just focus on the basic essentials. And we're fortunate enough to actually focus on things like mental health or taking time for oneself, which is an essential process in fully integrating here in society. Lastly, we have the Family Strengthening Program, which focuses on the familial relationships, including and also includes things like financial planning going forward, making sure that family can be successful. So just, I threw a lot of information at you, but kind of abstract. So here's a few concrete examples that I'd like to talk about to kind of give some faces to the names. So here is our client, Sophia. She's part of the Employment Readiness Program. And in this picture, she is actually picking up from one of our partners, Career Wardrobe, some outfits for her new career. So Sophia is a home health aide and is currently applying to be in our Certified Nursing Assistant Training Program through NSC. So that's kind of touching on, we're not just here for initial jobs, but we also try to equip our clients to be successful in the long term. So here we have also pictured the NSC Food Access Program. As I mentioned, we're actually providing culturally appropriate groceries bi-weekly to families, and that capacity has increased by 512%. This is due to a number of reasons during COVID, whether it be job loss, or some of our clients are health-wise are a little more vulnerable, and so going to the grocery store isn't safe at this time. So through community partnerships, such as partnerships with Phil Abundance, and volunteer support, we've actually been able to deliver these door-to-door to 512% more than we had coming into our office. So that's been an incredible testament of how community support is able to make it work even during the most dire times. Lastly, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to the NSC legal team and what your support here. Like I said, it leads to long-term solutions. So I just want to share a quick story of the hard work they've been doing. They had a big win this summer. On July 7th, NSC lawyers won the victory of German Santos versus Warden Pike County Correctional Facility. Essentially, NSC's client was a lawful permanent resident who had been detained in ICE custody for over 2.5 years while he fought a deportation case, all because of a single marijuana offense. During that time, he was never entitled to a hearing. In its decision, the Third Circuit held that this lengthy detention without a bond hearing is unconstitutional, and that was done because of NSC lawyers. So that is a precedent-setting decision that will influence immigrant life of lawful permanent residents being held in detention centers throughout the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware legal system. So that was a huge win. So how can you help? Now that you've learned about who our clients are, what we do here at NSC, how can you get involved? So as I mentioned before, Danielle and I work closely with the resettlement team, and this is a big part that we need a lot of community support in. So I just want to bring up when a refugee first gets here, as Danielle talked about through that process, they're processed through the UNHCR, they arrive, the USCIS lets us know that they're here and we've accepted them into our caseload. We get $975 per client. That's it. So imagine you have your suitcase, you arrive, you have to pay a security deposit, you have to pay your rent, get furniture, get household products, as well as feed your family. $975 is simply not enough to make all of these things happen, which is why that resettlement is a private-public partnership. So we need these things, or we need your help to make this happen. So out of this $975, it can be used for anything in this resettlement process, whether it's buying dishes for the family or helping for a sustainable rent in the future, which is why we ask for donations so that we don't have to dip into this $975 fund in order for this family to sustain. So these are required items that we are required to give the family. It's very basic items. And so we accept donations for all of these. They can, if you're cleaning out your kitchen, you're making a big move, please think of NSC and reach out for donations. At the end of this slide, I will show, or at the end of this presentation, there's my contact information, and you would contact me, Jackie McCann, for any donation inquiries as well as volunteer inquiries. So the furnishings, as you can see right, is the top list. Those usually are given through partnerships. We don't have the capacity at NSC to keep beds or kitchen tables here. So usually those are given to us through partnerships. So if you know anybody that's in the home goods industry, we're always looking to increase capacity in that way. But as for everybody else, anything else on this list can be given through donations, whether you're having a drive with some kind of organization, whether you're part of some kind of faith-based group or extracurricular activity, you're looking to get your family involved. These really can be contributed on a group or individual level. All of these can be given gently used, except for bedding and linen and towels. All linen sorts need to be new, and no matter where you are, whether you're in the Philadelphia area or you're in another state or you're on vacation or you're at work, you're on your lunch, wherever you are, you can actually donate these items online in about 5 minutes. So we have Amazon wishlist set up. I'm going to be dropping the link in the chat for you to access that. And we have all of these items listed for you to donate. So the link that I just put in the chat, it's both a volunteer link that you can click on to sign up to volunteer, and it's also the Amazon wishlist link. So moving on, we kind of have packaged these in affordable ways or creative ways that might make it easier, because that was a big list that we just threw at you. So if you want to focus on one area of this list, whether it's cooking items or kitchen items, or you have an eye for interior decorating, you want to focus on household items, here's a general price tag of what we'd predict that would cost. So it's not a very overwhelming cost. It's by far a generous donation and will be used greatly, but they do range in price. So some are definitely more doable than others. And these will be used for our resettlement team when a refugee arrives to be put into their home upon arrival. All right. So in addition, I mentioned that $975. So here's the things we have to provide to the family. We have these lists of goods, and then we also have, the links will be available after the meeting as well. We're gonna send out, this meeting is being recorded, so we'll send out an email with all the links, as well as the recorded video if you wanna go back and look at it at all. Thank you so much for the compliments in the chats. So like I mentioned before, we have that $975 budget. So in addition to the list of goods that the family will walk in, and they'll have their kitchen stocked, they'll have basic toiletries for their family. We also want them to have culturally appropriate groceries and hot meals. So let me just show you a quick little grocery list of what this would look like. Now this ideally and traditionally is done through donors, so we don't have to dip into that $975 and can use it in a more sustainable way for that family. So here's just a quick example. Like we said, they're culturally appropriate, so every ethnicity has their own grocery list that varies to that country's palate. And so how this would work is essentially, if you're interested in participating in these donations, or signing up to provide a hot meal or groceries, you would email me and I can put you on a list. And whenever we receive a travel arrival, I cycle through the list. So you won't be getting an email every time, but I would let you know occasionally when we have it. It's okay if you can't provide, it's just a moment to let you know, hey, we're looking for this. And if you are able to at the time, you could get involved. Or if you just want to reach out on your own for a one-time offer, that is just as acceptable as well. So then I would let you know, okay, we have these clients from this country, this is how many people are in their family, and here's the appropriate grocery list for them, and it would be delivered at this time. Now, especially during COVID, we've transitioned a lot online. So just like with the Amazon wish list, we also have online platforms that you can order groceries from instantly. We have Instacart, Giant Peapod, Amazon Fresh. Just to be clear, they're not NSC's versions of this. You would just use these platforms. They're very efficient. We've used them before. Platforms that you would just use that grocery list that we send you and click on the items, and boom, a family that's arriving after a 14-hour journey now can come home to food that is familiar to them. And that is just a huge and incredible gift. In addition to the groceries, we also provide a culturally appropriate hot meal. We like to partner with local restaurants for this. As you can see, that's Danielle, who was presenting first in the picture with an employee from Tandoori of India here in South Philadelphia. They've been a great partnership. And so when we have people from that part of the world who are familiar with that cuisine coming in, we often get it from them. So this can come from you if you call into a restaurant to go, that's totally acceptable. Or if you'd like to make a culturally appropriate meal, if you want to look up a recipe or you're familiar with the cuisine, that's also acceptable. It can be a fun family activity. If cooking isn't your thing, but you still want to participate, calling in is just as acceptable as well. So we've talked a lot about home setups today. I just want to share a quick little video of what it looks like, just so you can get an idea of what we're doing. And here with COVID, you can tell me if you are interested in a home setup and you want to do it alone. That's totally fine. We can arrange that. Or if you're okay with 1 or 2 people being in the house and socially distanced, we'll provide masks and gloves. So here's just a quick little video of what a home setup looks like. All right. So yeah, that was just a little bit of what a home setup looks like. You go in, you know, it can either be by yourself or with 2 or 3 other people, and it takes usually about an hour max. Usually you aren't moving furniture. We would let you know before, but most of the time you're not. The furniture is there, the goods are there. You are simply making beds, setting up the kitchen, making it look nice for the family's arrival so that it's ready to just be completely lived in at that moment. So lastly, the last way I'd like to talk about involvement is through our seasonal initiatives. So every year NSC has a few drives that we do that can happen throughout the year. Oops, sorry about that. One moment, technical difficulty. Okay, so some of these seasonal initiatives, we just had one about 2 or 3 weeks ago that was for a backpack drive, and we had lots of donors through that. It was incredible. The best way to get involved with these, and honestly with any initiative that we have, is to follow us on social media. So the next slide is some contact information in our social media pages. We have a Facebook and an Instagram, and we are constantly posting about these initiatives when they're in the works. So for the backpack drive example, we would post on our Facebook and Instagram, we're hosting this backpack drive, click this link to purchase backpacks or supplies and goods. So again, all of this is very COVID friendly. It's done virtually now. And then we were able to put together over 200 backpacks with age appropriate books that we had from local donors, which was amazing, as well as fully stocked with school supplies and materials that included access to our helpline. That's one of the initiatives that we're running through COVID is there's a helpline that students can call to talk to tutors. And there's interpreters involved in that as well. So these backpacks were stocked with all of this pretty critical information to get the school year off starting. And we were able to deliver those backpacks on the first day of school this year. And none of this would have been possible without community support. So we really appreciate that. Going forward, in the month of November, we are currently developing our coat drive. This happens annually, and it's a great way for community members to get involved. We oftentimes have members of faith-based congregations, as well as just local organizations come together, and they collect coats amongst themselves, and then they'll donate it to us. So if you're interested in doing some kind of community work, but you don't, you kind of want it planned for you in a sense, we're gladly hop on that. We have the client base that needs the support, and so we are always looking to collaborate in that way. And so you would just contact me, Jackie McCann, and we would discuss ways to make that work. An example of that is Stitch Central. It's a Philadelphia little organization that quilts together. They put together now 2 years in a row for our coat drive, warm weather blankets, as well as accessories such as hats, scarves, gloves, and they contribute to our coat drive. So through our coat drive, we look for corporate sponsorships. We have a partnership with Burlington Coat Factory that we get discounts on. Then we look to group support from different organizations throughout Philadelphia, and then as well as individual support. So truly there are endless ways to get involved. I hope that this presentation has inspired some ideas or questions, which we are happy to answer. So lastly, I just want to share my contact information, and then we can go over some questions. We had some questions in the chat, and we'll open it up to any additional questions that we have. So again, my name is Jackie McCann. There is my email. We will be sending out an email to everybody that was in attendance today with this information. So this will be in your inbox. And feel free to click on our link here. This will list a number of ways that you can get involved. It will have the link available for you to sign up to be a volunteer, a home setup volunteer, and the Amazon wish list. And if you're interested in what we're doing throughout the year with these seasonal initiatives or whatever other programs that we may come up with and may emerge, you would be notified through these social media platforms. So next I'm gonna open up for questions. Feel free to put them in the chat. Yes, we do take secondhand donations for clothes. They need to be gently used. The only item that we don't take secondhand is the bedding and the towels, but as long as the clothes look new, then that is very acceptable, and we can actually use that during our coat drive or save, more lighter clothes for later in the year.
Andrea, thank you. It's good to hear from you again. I will say that we have adapted our presentations for congregations and corporations. Jackie and I are able to do presentations, whether that be a socially distanced in person or another virtual Zoom call like this, where we can, share information about our agency and who we serve and how your congregation or your corporation can get involved. We've actually had some corporations use a home setup as a team or trust building activity for their staff members. So that was really neat to be a part of. So we are able to get creative.
And Casey Kane, our Instagram handle is NSCPhila, PHILA. Is there any other questions? Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this Welcoming Week as part of Welcoming America and the City of Philadelphia's Office of Immigrant Affairs. You can follow the other welcoming events on their websites. We thank you for your time today and hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone. There's more chats.
Hi, Randall. I just received your question. I'd like to answer it.
What was the question?
It was if we provide homework for ESL students in public schools in Philadelphia.
Yes, we actually just launched what's called our homework helpline, where we actually have community members sign up as volunteers who go through a set of trainings to then operate a homework helpline where they have access to telephonic interpreters to help parents and children kind of navigate what they're doing virtually with schools and if they're having trouble with any homework.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you. I was just slow at typing the question.
No worries, no worries.
Thank you, Randall, for joining us and everybody else. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you too. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
We're the only ones still here, so.